KUUMA. So welcome to our KUUMA live program. My name is Baird and Diaye, and we are so pleased to have this incredible program, first ever Kwanzaa at the DAR Museum, and we're really pleased to have everyone. And we're going to start the program. There's lots more to come, but we're going to open with In Process, amazing a cappella group, and we are going to continue with the ring shout, and we'll come back to talk about these incredible participants and about the whole program after we open. And we want to thank, of course, our partners at the DAR Museum, and they will be around later as well. So let's start. Thanks. Come a long way to be together, you and me. We've come a long way to be together, you and me, and we'll stay holding to each other, fighting and trusting as we grow. And we'll stay holding to each other, fighting and trusting as we grow. It's been a mighty distance, a dangerous journey to be here. It's been a mighty distance, a dangerous journey to be here. And we'll stay holding to each other, fighting and trusting as we grow. And we'll stay holding to each other, fighting and trusting as we grow. It's taken the sacrifice of so many of us to be one. It's taken the sacrifice of so many of us to be one. And we'll sing holding to each other, fighting and fighting and trusting as we grow. We've come a long ways to be everybody has a woman, a man, even children that came through with us that are no longer here. And so in our tradition, it is a sacred moment for us to remember them and call out their names. So what I'm asking you to do is when I pour, to call out their names, just like they poured into you. Call out their names as I pour. With the breath of life, we take this water that we can see through, it's clear, and we pour it in recognition of people that have gone on. We pour it with intention of calling those spirits in the room. Now, if they raise hell on the outside, don't call them in here today. Call in those that walk in the light and the love of Christ. We have a plant we're going to use. A beautiful plant. So, let us just take a deep breath in. Exhale. Think of the names that you want to call. Maybe people that you never met, but you heard your family talk about. Call them in. Those that live in the light of Christ. We're going to call them in. And just to wake them up. We call them. Call them, call them.
Ashe. And so it is.
So it is.
Thank you.
And this is one of our traditional African American dances. This one is called You Got a Right to the Tree of Life. Run, Mary, run. Run, Martha, run. Run, Mary, run. I say, you got a right to the tree of life. You got a right to the tree of life. Run, Mary, run. Run, Martha, one. Run, Mary, run. I say, you got a right to the tree of life.
You got a right to the tree of life. You
Run, Mary, run. Run, Martha, run. You got the run. I say, you got a right to the tree of life. You got a right to the tree of life. You got a right to the tree of life. You got a right to the tree of life. You got a right. You got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
You got a right. You got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
Ups and downs, but you got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
Ups and downs, but you got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
Troubles come, but you got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
Trouble come, but you got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
All God's children got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
All God's children got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
Paul and Silas got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
Paul and Silas got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
Mary and Martha got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
Mary and Martha got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
But Hebrew children, they got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
Troubles come, but you got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
We all know that we got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
You got a right. You got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
Troubles come, but you got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
Burden down, but you got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
You're burdened down, but you got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
The Israel children got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
Angry children got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
Trouble come, but you got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
You got a right. You got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
Mary and Martha got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
Mary and Martha, you got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
Run, Mary, you got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
Run, Martha, you got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
Trouble come, but you got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
You're burdened down, but you got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
You got a right. You got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
You got a right. You got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
All God's children got a right.
You got a right to the tree of life.
You got a right to the tree of life.
You got a right to the tree of life. You got a right to the tree of life. You got a right to the tree of life.
So run, Mary, run. Hey, run, Martha, run. I say, run, Mary, run. Hey, you got a right to the tree of life. You got a right to the tree of life.
You got a right to the tree of life. You got a right to the tree of life.
Run, Mary, run. Hey, run, Martha, run. Hey, run, Martha, run. I say,
You got a right to the tree of life.
you got a right to the tree of life. You got a right to the tree of life.
You got a right to the tree of life.
You got a right to the tree of life.
You got a right to the tree of life.
You got a right to the tree of life.
You got a right to the tree of life.
You got a right to the tree of life. You got a right to the tree of life. You got a right to the tree of life.
Thank you, and again, welcome, welcome, welcome. to this Kwanzaa Live celebration. We just had a wonderful beginning to this by In Process, Pam Rogers, and Diaye, and Akosua Ian McCrae. Thank you so much. And also the White House Studios. Althea Gray McKenzie, Artistic Director, Ariana McKenzie, and Laura McKenzie, and Ariana Overgon. Thank you so much. And some of you who may not have ever been to a Kwanzaa celebration before may be wondering, well, what's this all about? Well, in the 1970s, it was a time when people were really looking towards creating institution building. And institution building in the sense of in communities across the United States, and even in the Caribbean and the diaspora, African Americans were really looking at a series of ideals of what we wanted our communities to look like and what we wanted our communities to be. And just like in the beginning, when we're celebrating now the 250th of the United States, there were ideals. They weren't always lived up to. And there were some contradictions. We're going to talk about that later. But there were ideals and there were principles that were important. And they had to do with liberty for all. They had to do with things like self-determination. I mean, what's more American than that? Thinking about, looking at self-determination, getting away from colonialism and so on. And so the Kwanzaa celebration was founded by a social scientist, Ron Karenga, who said, well, there are some basic foundational African values, like self-determination, like unity, like cooperative economics, like you have some other ones, purpose, and faith, and creativity. So each day of Kwanzaa, we celebrate a different principle, and we try to live them throughout the year. But right now, we take this time, which is the time between Christmas and New Year's for many people, and there are many other traditions. But it's the time of year where we think about our past and we think about our present and future. And so that is one of the foundations of Kwanzaa and the Kwanzaa celebration. And later on, we are going to have an explanation of the symbolism of Kwanzaa. So we have two Kwanzaa tables, one here and one in the other room. Right now, though, we want to say that this celebration in particular is in celebration of this wonderful exhibition that is Fighting for Freedom. And we're so happy that we were able to partner, that the Lee, where is she? Lee Gatson, oh wow, I'm sorry about that. Jennifer Johnson and Lee Glazer reached out to the African American Craft Alliance to create this program. And we have a program in honor of two of our curators, one who's here right now, Tiffany Momon, who is one of the curators of this incredible exhibition, and we'll be joined by Dr. Torren Gatson, Dr. Tiffany Momon, and by an amazing museum person, scholar, and crafts person who is here, Kimberly Kemp. And so right now, we want to invite you to go and see the exhibition. And Dr. Tiffany is going to give us a tour, and then we'll come back here. There are refreshments in the back that are being put together. And then at 1 o'clock, please join us here again for the next presentation. I do have to mention also that another partner of AACA and now of the DAR is the Village of African American Doll, Puppet, and Textile Artists. And representing This partner is, first of all, Francine Haskins, who is an amazing filmmaker and multimedia artist who created a wonderful presentation here, and Camilla Bryce-Laporte, who is the organizer and the hall designer for all of our team here, and Julie Dickinson Thompson, who's upstairs she's right here. Julie and Elaine Robert-Moore, we work together and we're all a team, but we want to thank you for coming and enjoy our program. Thank you. To have a wonderful presentation by some folks who I think are brilliant, the two curators, as well as Kimberly Camp, who is a brilliant scholar and artist. And my name is Dr. Diaye, and I am the director of the African American Craft Alliance, and we partnered with the DAR Museum for this incredible, I would say, revolutionary program at the beginning of the Revolutionary Year. And so we are going to give just a couple minutes more for more people to come back from getting refreshments, and then we're going to start. And we're pleased to start with an introduction by the executive officers of the Daughters of the American Revolution, Virgina Ginnie Storage, President General, and Renee Pope-Price, Curator General. So I'll introduce you again, but we just want to get people to finish what they're doing and come in. There are children coming in, and we have a program for children upstairs that will be crafts and songs and dance associated with Kwanzaa, because this is how we do it. And so we'll be starting in just a little while. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Ladies and gentlemen, as President General of the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution, it is truly my pleasure to welcome you to our historic headquarters. You may or may not be aware, but our headquarters encompass 3 buildings that take up the entire city block. We are completely owned by women with no mortgage, and that's something to be said in today's environment. So we're very proud of that. Another thing we are particularly proud of during this administration is our beautiful library. And one of the things that we are focusing on during the Storage administration, which runs through 2028, is what we used to call forgotten patriots. Now we're calling them rediscovered patriots, right? And we feel like we have one of the best genealogical collections in the world for people coming to find their ancestry. And one of the initiatives of this administration is something called 250 for the 250th. And that is finding 250 of those rediscovered patriots, proving their service, proving their lineage, so that potential members and our members can trace their ancestry back to those people. We're focusing on Black ancestors, we're focusing on Indigenous ancestors, and we're focusing on female ancestors. And I'm very happy to say we have already made great strides with that. We have about 50 of those ancestors already on our website, and we are just thrilled. So if you have time or don't have time today, want to come back and visit our library, I'm sure there's something you can find there that will help your pursuit. Today we gather to celebrate an extraordinary event organized by the African American Craft Alliance in partnership with the DAR Museum. This program honors KUUMA, or creativity, the 6th principle of Kwanzaa, and marks the celebratory conclusion of our groundbreaking exhibition, Fighting for Freedom, Black Craftspeople and the Pursuit of Independence. Since its opening at the DAR Museum last March, Fighting for Freedom has illuminated the powerful and often overlooked narratives of Black craftspeople and artisans from the 18th and 19th centuries. The exhibition was developed in collaboration with the Black Craftspeople Digital Archive, co-curated by the esteemed Dr. Tiffany Momon and Dr. Torren Gatson, in conjunction with William Strollo at DAR. This exhibition not only showcases the remarkable work of these artisans through furniture, metalworks, ceramics, but develops a personal insight into how their craft served as a catalyst for freedom-seeking individuals. It is particularly meaningful to connect these historic narratives with the creativity of contemporary artists, craftspeople, and performers of the African community. As we stand on the eve of our nation's 250th anniversary, we are reminded that creativity, resilience, and the pursuit of freedom are foundational to the American story. I extend my sincere thanks to the African American Craft Alliance, the organizers, the co-curators, and for everyone who had a hand in making this such a successful program today, but also a successful exhibition since March of last year. Together, we honor the legacy of those who come before us, and we celebrate the enduring spirit of creativity in our communities. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate you coming out on the New Year's Eve.
Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Renee Pace, the Curator General in DAR, and one of my key responsibilities as Curator General is to promote the DAR Museum's remarkable collection of decorative arts in ways that inspire conversation about the diverse American experience. We do this through our exhibitions, through our correspondent docent program, which brings the work of the DAR Museum to communities across the nation and even the world, and through public programs like the one we're sharing together today. It's truly a pleasure to welcome all of you to this Kwanzaa program in partnership with the African American Craft Alliance. It's a new partnership for DAR and really couldn't be more timely. As our President General noted, it's especially meaningful to gather here on the eve of 2026 as we approach the beginning of the 250th anniversary of our nation. This moment invites us not only to reflect on our founding principles, but can also inspire us to think proactively about how we can continue to shape our country and make a difference both individually and collectively. Fighting for freedom, Black craftspeople, and the pursuit of independence has been a critical initiative for the DAR Museum as we continue to document and honor American history in all its complexity. We are delighted to partner with the African American Craft Alliance as we reflect on the exhibition, Fighting for Freedom, and celebrate creativity with this remarkable group of practicing Black curators, craftspeople, performers, and artists. We would also like the Museum Director and Chief Curator and the entire Museum Headquarters team for their execution of this partnership and event. Now it is my pleasure to welcome to the podium Diana Ninjay, author, artist, scholar, and founder and director of the African American Craft Alliance, to open our moderated conversation. Thank you all for being here, and please join me in welcoming Diana.
Thank you so much. And we want to thank the DAR, and we want to thank you so much for this partnership. It's been a partnership, actually an experience that has been just wonderful. We are pleased to have an entire team from AACA and from the African American Doll, Puppet, and Textile Collective, I could say, working together with us to produce this. And so they've done an incredible program. We are a large community. We are a very diverse community. And it's so great that this is happening right at this time. It's a great way to begin our 250th year. As I mentioned before when we started, the celebration of Kwanzaa involves looking at the principles of the Nguzusaba, which are principles of self-reliance, of community cooperation, of faith, of purpose, of creativity. And I know that everyone else, other people may know some of the others. There's 7 principles. And as I mentioned before, there were principles and ideals that were part of what people fought for in the American Revolution. And if you've seen the Ken Burns documentary, which I hope all of you get to see, which also was supported somewhat by the DAR, it tells a story that really widens the idea of who fought and the ideals and some of the contradictions. So we're going to hear about all of that because that has been a part of American history and that is important that we acknowledge. And I think that this only adds to the significance not only of this exhibition, but of this program, which I hope will be the first of many other collaborations with the DAR and with like-minded folks. So I'm going to ask you to consult this large program, if you have it, for large biographies of the brilliant people who we have here. Dr. Torren Gatson, who's joined us, Dr. Tiffany Momon, who are being celebrated as well for their curation of this program, and Ms. Kimberly Kemp, who is an amazing scholar, artist, and we'll talk about the contemporary, the continuation of what the folks in that room started with, which is a tradition, a resilient tradition of craft, creativity, activism, and excellence. And my grandfather was a goldsmith. He was in another part of the diaspora. He was in Guyana, but I know he set the stage for me to become an artist and for people in my family to become goldsmiths, and so I know from a very personal way the connections between art and craft and culture. And so without further ado, we want to ask our first speaker, Dr. Tiffany Gatson, Co-Curator of Fighting for Freedom, to come and present for us. Thank you so much.
A special thank you for the invitation to speak here today, and a special thank you to everyone who worked behind the scenes to make this talk happen. As the founder and co-director of the Black Craftspeople Digital Archive, which you can find at blackcraftspeople.org, I spend a lot of time researching Black craftspeople across the country and the Caribbean. And at the BCDA, we research Black craftspeople through these 3 avenues: sources, objects, and place. And what rests at the core of this project is finding Black craftspeople and telling their stories through what we can learn about their lives, the objects they created, and the places they impacted. And all of that brings us here to our largest object study to date, the Fighting for Freedom exhibition that we curated with the DAR Museum. And so today I was prepared to speak with you about some of the contradictions found in the freedom stories of the enslaved craftspeople and the people who enslaved them. I was planning to mention the dumbwaiter and table, crafted by John Hemmings, who was enslaved by Thomas Jefferson, and other objects in the show with similar themes. But sitting on the airplane this morning, I decided to make a pivot. And I really decided that I wanted to focus on the stories we tell through this work. The stories we research, the names we uncover, and how work like this exhibition keeps those stories alive. When we were looking for quotes to feature in the exhibition, I found this quote by a formerly enslaved man named Lewis Hughes, which is on the wall in the gallery. And when describing the skilled craft work that took place on the plantation where he was enslaved, he declared, quote, There were slaves who were carpenters and workers in wood who could turn their hands to almost anything. And so this is just a sentence from a much longer passage, but the tone of the entire passage was joy and admiration. Hughes described the labor of the enslaved people with such admiration that I knew this quote had to go on the wall. In his memoir, he was telling us a layered story about the history of this country, enslaved people, relationships, community, life, and experiences beyond slavery. But through his storytelling and this narrative he shared with us about his life, I learned the stories of enslaved people like Uncle Ben, who was described as a skilled blacksmith, and Aunt Liza, the head weaver. And Hughes mentioned that everything on the plantation was made by enslaved people, from furniture to baskets, to yarn and thread, to spinning wheels and farm implements. Everything was made by their knowledge and their hands. And when I think about making and creating, I am reminded of enslaved cabinet maker John Goff, who made the secretary wardrobe on screen, a rare survival for an 18th century black craftsman. He was bold enough to sign the piece on one of the drawers. Born enslaved, Goff found success as a free craftsman in 18th century Charleston. His former enslaver mandated that, quote, "I do direct that they pay him, when he is free, the sum of 50 pounds current money to enable him to purchase tools that he may get his livelihood through his trade." And so Goff owned properties throughout South Carolina. He married, but he also faced considerable anti-blackness in the Charleston area, so much so that he was arrested, escaped from jail, and then he disappears from the written record. But we know of Goff because of the furniture he left behind. And so continuing this thought, I was reminded of enslaved cabinet maker James, who was hired out to a cabinet shop in Norfolk, Virginia. His enslaver wanted to make sure that when he was free, he would have his tools. He purchased his freedom through his labor, creating objects like the breakfast table on screen. And for both of these men, I'm reminded of their sacrifice and skill in their stories. I am also reminded of the way that they live on through their work. I've been fortunate enough to research these men and others and tell their stories. And I've researched a lot of stories over the years, some tragic and some hopeful. But as author Margaret Atwood so wisely put it, in the end, we will all be stories. And so how do you want your story told? Because our lives become legacies told by others. And I also think about one of the key things here, that being what stories can we tell about Black craftspeople? And when we tell their stories, are we doing them justice? But chief among my thoughts is that we must create an object study method for Black craftspeople that requires us to contend with the racialized and gendered stereotypes common in the lives of enslaved women and how that limits how they appear in the archive. An object study method that demonstrates a dedication to critically recovering silenced voices, that demands that we see Black craftspeople as artisans and the creators of art, that sees the beauty and labor of enslaved art, all of it, from the tangible to the intangible, from bricks to horseshoes to the food preparation arts, such as baking and butchering, and to the more traditional decorative arts, such as cabinet making, pottery, and painting. And it also calls on us to amplify the narratives of individuals from African heritage throughout history, the present, and the future. And what I want you to sit deeply with here is that there is power in the stories that we tell. There is power in the stories told in our exhibition. And hopefully this exhibition inspires others to do the same. Telling these stories when it's difficult, telling these stories when it's unpopular, telling these stories when only a few are listening, and telling these stories to recognize and uplift Black craftspeople. But never forget that the stories that we don't tell define us more than the stories that we do tell. And as this exhibition comes to a close at the DAR, I'm thinking towards the future. Our future is one where we continue to tell these stories, all of these stories, with all of the details of the Black men, women, and children who labored to create the decorative arts objects in museum collections across the country. Scholar and archivist Michelle Caswell reminds us that in doing this work, we must, quote, use traces of the past, not just to recuperate marginalized histories, but to build a more just and equitable future. And so it is my hope that this exhibition and the stories that it tells have done just that. Thank you.
Going to be joined by Dr. Torren Gatson, who is also a curator of this exhibition. And again, you can read short bios and long bios of them in the materials you have. So without further ado, Dr. Gatson.
Greetings, everyone. I hope everybody is well. Before we begin, one of my early, even though we're not there yet, New Year's resolutions for 2026 is to stop coming after my colleague because she does such a wonderful job of always bringing up the rear, and I'm stuck with that task. But alas, I'm happy to be here with you all. And so, as my colleague gave you a great overview and an in-depth synopsis of some of the impact, I'm going to talk about another angle. So, fighting for freedom, we chose throughout the process to kind of anchor the knowledge and the travel and the traversing of the exhibition through a thematic prose. And so in the gallery, there are a series of themes starting with mastery and then contradictions, as was just eloquently unpacked by my colleague. And then we have pride, we have sojourn, we have moments. And there's one in between I skipped, and that's what I'm going to talk about for just a minute with you all, kind of bring it together even more. And that's my favorite section, identity. And so on screen, you'll see the objects that we chose to go into that section, identity. And for so long, I went back and forth about every object, literally almost, in this show being my favorite. But really, in this section, we get at the hallmark, in my opinion, of what the show is. And that is looking at the stories of these craftspeople, right? You know, the production of craft, the process of craft has never been and will never be monolithic. These people encompass stories, they encompass trauma, triumph, pain. They were free people, people born enslaved, some who earned their freedom, some who stole their freedom, and one slave owner that is in our show who was Black. And so it really kind of runs that gambit. But as we look at the objects on screen for a second to just talk about this idea of identity. And so on the wall hanging is a picture of a man named Dennis Durham. And Durham was born enslaved, ultimately earning freedom, and becomes a wealthy merchant in Kentucky. And him and his wife, Diaye, are actually captured as a pair, although we did not have her portrait in the show, by an itinerant painter named Patrick Henry Davenport. And Davenport, a white painter from who was up in the Ohio Valley and came down to Kentucky, captured Dennis Durham. And one of the reasons this was striking for us is because Dennis is the feature, he is the sitter, he is the point and purpose of the painting, which was done in 1839. But secondly, it's the only known work thus far, with many coming available or coming to light more often from Patrick Henry Davenport, of a Black sitter. And so this was here to kind of illuminate that presence of Black makers and Black doers, but people who had rose to a certain point where they wanted their identity to be framed. And below, we see three other pieces and a portrait I'll talk about briefly. But in the case, we see a body figure in Osnabrück shirt, and it has an enslaved badge. And those badges, which I've spent a considerable amount of time doing research on, are used throughout the southern landscape, and particularly in the South, particularly in port cities. But Charleston really becomes synonymous for really the iconic prose of why and how it's used. And so we have this enslaved badge in here for a number of reasons, but perhaps the two hallmarks for that are, number one, there were hundreds and thousands of enslaved people who would have worn these badges, who would have done any number of tasks, and who would have traversed the landscape in this prism of freedom within a bubble, so to speak. But second, individuals who actually made those badges themselves, many coppersmiths, some tinsmith, and some silversmith, were apprenticing under white owners. And so think about that kind of forced tension of actually creating the very object that kept you in bondage. And although small, it's magnanimous in its meaning and its feature. Next to it, though, is my favorite object in the entire show. And it is a daguerreotype, actually, of a young male white sitter, a young child. And it was captured by a man who we believe, does not receive anywhere near the amount of attention that they deserve. Most people know of Augustus Washington's work, but they never have heard his name. Augustus Washington was born in New Jersey. He had a mother who was free, a father who was enslaved, and he learned to read and write early until laws changed in New Jersey and he was taken out of being able to be schooled. But he ends up enrolling in Dartmouth College in the 1840s. He's the only African American, I believe it's 1846, to enroll. But he ends up having to leave for money troubles, nothing new under the sun. And he takes up photography. Well, long story short, along this promenade, he ends up running into John Brown. And Augustus Washington is the person that captured John Brown's famous 4-print still, which is at the National Portrait Gallery and has hung for many years. But we don't talk about Augustus Washington. We talk about John Brown and what his vision and view is, but we don't talk about the person who framed what we see as one of the, undergirding forms of American identity, of uplift, of resistance, and it's a black man, right? And so John Brown actually sat in his studio in Connecticut for that portrait. So looking at that, we're really bouncing around what is identity. As another view, and on the wall, there's a picture of a woman named Lucindy. And she was a formerly enslaved woman in Georgia, and during the 1930s, the WPA narratives came through and interviewed her. But when they did, her interview stands out because she paused and told them to stop, went into her home, brought out her spinning wheel, and began to beam, and recounted her story while she beamed. And so we knew that was powerful, we knew that was important, because she actually wanted to take part in a process that connected her, not only to her past, but to her being and for her representations. And so for us, when we look at the show, as we bounce around and just see other angles of it, we wanted to show the various thematic positions that Black people were in. And we wanted to show again that there wasn't a monolithic. People were sojourning the landscape, people were moving around, people were using economics to their benefit, people were purchasing land, people were making in the freedom to create, like Tobias Scott, who made beautiful, ornate, ephemeral fans from bird feathers and other accoutrements on the landscape. But one of the hallmarks, as I end for us, of the show is the fact that we felt like it was incredibly important to bring all of these makers, many of whom never met, never knew each other, but all make up, this kind of lasting residue of Black craft in America into one space. And never has it been done. We got considerable amount of loans and from private collections, from public spaces, all bringing these collections, as was mentioned before, Thomas Jefferson's Monticello, George Washington's Mount Vernon, Colonial Williamsburg, the Museum of Fine Arts Houston, and on and on. And people understood the importance of these objects, not only participating in this show, but coming into this sacred and hallowed space to all sit and talk together. And so I think as we talk about this spirit of craft and how it speaks and kind of echoes in the chamber of identity, but also within uplift and fight, we need to think about how these Black craftspeople, through their myriad existences and lives, kind of began that process, or participated, I won't say began. Thank you.
Now we've learned so much more about the exhibition, about the planning, about the Black craftsmen, and there's a wonderful catalog of it. If you did not pick it up yet, there's an incredible catalog with essays by the curators and essays by other scholars about Black craftsmen. It's right here at the museum. So now we turn to contemporary crafts, and how are contemporary crafts people following in the footsteps, or really continuing this tradition of fighting for freedom. And so I'm very pleased to introduce Kimberly Kim. Thank you.
I timed my presentation for exactly 7 minutes. I was told I could not go over that time. You can start the images. They'll play in the background, but I think what for me is the most, if there's questions about the work later, you can always ask me. Before I start, I want to commend Tiffany and Torren for their research. Coming up in this world, I could have never envisioned that we would have the kind of scholarship and documentation of what Black American artists were doing. It just wasn't possible back then. So again, to thank you all for what it is that you're doing. Black American women have, and I'll start off with a quote by one of my heroes, Bernice Johnson Reagan. Maybe it is to the culture of women that we should turn to for a deeper understanding of the skills needed to develop and maintain research and educational programs in Black American culture that effectively negotiate the range between the larger dominant community. I can't, and I brought my Marian Anderson doll because I knew I was coming to the DAR, and so I actually got a grant in Philadelphia to make her, and I put her in the dress that she was wearing when she was forced to sing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. And I'm reminded also of the incredible strength of the women in this craft alliance, the doll makers, a fabulous outfit by the amazing Brenda Winstead, who's sitting over there. I can't go anywhere and not acknowledge her creativity. I say I'm Black American because I think we do a disservice to the specific identities of people from the continent who represent a seemingly countless multitude of ethnicities, languages, and dialects. We are the evidence of a resilient African tradition who were, despite all odds and cruelty, depravity, were able to not only maintain the culture of a wide variety of countries and locales, but to influence the shaping of the language and cultural identity of a new country. We are not and never were monolithic. True to form, we developed hundreds of English dialects and traditions that are inextricably woven into the fabric of the Americas. The style of English developed on a tobacco farm in Virginia, where there was a majority of Igbo-speaking workers, was wildly different from the English that emerged on the Louisiana sugar plantation, where Yoruba were exposed to not only English, but also a heavy French influence. Different still was the English spoken on a cotton plantation in Georgia, and it was common for the enslaved on plantations just miles apart to speak vastly different dialects. As a specific ethnic group was taken to a specific geographic region in the Americas, each group brought the nuances of their traditions with them, and like religion, syncretized making into a uniquely Black American aesthetic. From the beginning, craft was made for a specific market, that of the enslavers. The fine craftsmanship of making objects of beauty, adoration, celebration, and ritual from the continent were caroused into the mimicry of colonial decorative arts and architecture traditions from Europe. These objects were vastly different from the dolls, furniture, and quilts we made for ourselves and each other. Whether traded or given freely among ourselves, the maker was defined by the buyer. If you wanted to make money, you had to make what the enslavers cherished. The recent Ken Burns series on the Revolutionary War goes further than other documentaries and books to address the centrality of our role in fighting for and forming this country from its inception. As the exhibit and its curators state from the start, the contradiction of fighting for freedom, promise never given in this country, is its great irony. I used to speak extemporaneously like this now. Now the rules have changed. There are none. Contemporary makers enjoy freedom and expression and limitless investigation into our identity as Black Americans. Whether making work that celebrates our ancestry on the continent or creating the self-deprecating art that dominates the contemporary world, we can be and make and choose as we please. Nell Painter, in her book, Creating Black Americans, writes that we are the second most indigenous people in the Western Hemisphere. American culture cannot be separated from our influence. We, however, claim a more recent genetic connection to the birthplace of us all. What is theirs is ours, but what is ours is not theirs. There have been some artists who say they cannot be defined by their identity, as though it's denigrating to be a Black American artist. Those things can be true. We are Black and we are American. We built this country, its economy and that of Europe were created of sugar, cotton, and tobacco. In 1993, the African American Museum and Cultural Center created a landmark exhibition called Uncommon Beauty in Common Objects, curated by Willis Bing Davis. The exhibition was the first of its kind, showcasing Black American craftsmen. The show traveled for 3 years, including the Minghai Museum, American Craft Museum, and the Smithsonian's Renwick Gallery. Each of the artists' portraits were drawn by John Oney Lockhart. Absent them, the artist's statements, the work demonstrated the freedom now we have as Black American craftsmen, richly imbued with our ancestry, our ownership of a uniquely Black American aesthetic that is polyrhythmic and polymorphic. I'm a painter and a doll maker. I once had a conversation with some artists who suggested that painting was cultural appropriation because painting was a European invention. Until I told them the earliest known artist palette came from the Bulbos Caves in South Africa. Culture does not exist without African culture. All of mankind was born of the continent. What is timeless and owned by all makers is the magic and mastery of what creativity is. The juncture of horrific self-doubt combined with unbelievable hubris. We make because we are so compelled. Given to total freedom of expression, we can make anything fundamentally centered in our humanity. These last few images that you're going to see, I did as a result of an exhibition. This is Big Al. The picture on the front of him is the guy that created racism. We have to thank him, 1453, Pope Nicholas V. I was asked to do a show a few years ago that talked about what is Blackness. And when I asked the curators what they meant, they said, well, people stolen from their heritage and snatched from their native land. I said, we're from here. My folks were standing on the shore, three centuries ago saying, oh, look, here comes some more people in a boat. And what I wanted to show in the exhibition was that we wouldn't have things taken from us, we created our own. We have our own traditions here. We created our own symbols. We created ideas out of what we brought here and what we had to work with. And even so, even now, a lot of those traditions and practices are not known to the majority of the country. This is Brother Black. These pieces are on the show in Los Angeles right now, actually, at the Will and Grant Still Center. But we created our own images and ideas of what we thought was important to people to speak of. And we are not defined by the enslavement and limitations of racism and bigotry. We created our own traditions and practices, and we will continue to do so. Thank you.
It's interesting because in my work, I work a lot with dress and identity, and dress and freedom, and one of the aspects of that is noting that many of the craft people, both during the time of enslavement, but also during the Civil Rights Movement, during the Black Power Movement, were able to gather community, were able to be supportive to movements because they were independent craftspeople. They may have been barbers or tailors or dressmakers dressmakers, like Rosa Parks was a dressmaker, but they were able to use that freedom to also be unfettered. They couldn't be fired from their jobs in a sense, you know. And so there's a lot of ways to look at this, both in terms of the freedom of craft and the freedom of making, as well as what that allows you to do. We can speak, and Torren has spoken about this too, and everyone has spoken about this a little bit, but we can't speak of African Americans or Black Americans as a singular people with a singular identity or perspective, as one group of people, both either by our experience and also by the way we frame our experience. However, certain aspects of our overall experience speak to what W.E.B. Du Bois talked about as double consciousness. You know, there are things that as Black Americans we have shared in terms of our experience. Is there such a thing as a Black craft narrative, aesthetic, or story that is a thread that goes through these experiences? And I'm going to ask Torren, why don't you start?
You know, I think so, to a point, and I think it begins in the process, as I mentioned during, my brief comments. Our show is composed of 47 different people, and really more, 47 objects through actually more than 47 people, because some objects have multiple people contributing to it, all of them from different parts of the country, all of them under different situations, whether it be free, enslaved, purchasing their freedom, running away, born free, and of different class structures, different religious affiliations, different cultural heritage. But I think that guiding light is that they're here and all operating in what America was or was becoming. And in many cases, all of them dealt with some form of oppression. And in their making and in their identity, they were trying to parse that out and tease that out. And so for me, one of the things, even with your previous question, but with this one, I think about was that in our exhibition catalog, us and our other curator, we all, when we were formulating and framing the dedication, and to the book, but paraphrased is, this book is dedicated to the thousands of Black craftspeople, both known and unknown, who never imagined that their skilled artistry would become the prominent point of esteemed gaze and reverence. And for me, that just kind of speaks back to these individuals are all in search of freedom, but freedom had a different connotation for each. But while it had a different connotation for each, all were, in our argument, trying to, get beyond or overcome or operate within a system of oppression. And that oppression was very much present, and in some cases staunch, but
Thank you. Well, Kimberly, because you also talked about it.
Yes, I'm not contagious, I'm just asthma, but anyway. I think there is a consistency to the Black American aesthetic because, it's hard to explain it, but the freedom comes in the process while creating, right? I can get through the day's news if I have clay in my hands and a needle and thread and some fabric and as I'm trying to work through all of that, it's coming out in the work. And so it's the process of making that is the freedom. Because you can forget about all the constraints that are put on you. As some of you know, I ran museums for 25 years. And some of the most contentious positions and institutions that anyone could imagine. Somebody said, do you run towards controversy? I said, no, it follows me. Only way I was able to do that work as a painter and a doll maker was to make. And there were some times that I would tell staff I was going on vacation and I was going to someplace very remote. I wasn't going to have any access to a phone or internet. And so I'd see him in a week or so, and I would go home to make. And I would just create all the time. I would go to sleep, I'd wake up, I'd go in the studio, and I would make. And that's the same process now. There is a soulfulness to the work of Black American artists because our identities are so deeply woven into a world history and culture. We're all mixed race people. And when I say what's yours is mine, but what's mine is not yours, when I did this sort of genetic thing, is try to figure out what I'm as much French German as I am Yoruba and Assam. And so the Dresden plates belong to me too. The French painters are my people too. But those Yoruba artists that go unnamed, those Igbo artists, all of these artists who go unnamed, who work in these traditions, they're also mine. And it percolates up in the work, whether we know it or not. Those symbols, those images, those colors, the materials, the use of shells and interweaving, all of it percolates up. That's what I think that process is.
This question made me think about the bed on the rear wall of the exhibition and thinking about, is there a Black craft aesthetic? Because when I look at that bed, I'm reminded, and I talk about that bed a lot, it's from Tennessee and I'm from Tennessee, but when I look at that bed and think about what we know about it and think about the fact that Louis Buckner is carving what he knows. He is carving what he sees, what's around him. Everything from the flowers on the bed, to the eggplants, to the mini split punches on the bed. That to me is what that aesthetic looks like. It's that look. It's that look that comes from within.
These all leave us with a lot to think about, and I think there are many artist crafts people in this room, and in fact it made me think about and very esteemed artist crafts people, including Francine Haskins with his incredible dolls, and Elaine Moore, who is an amazing jeweler and author as well. And there are also artists who are here as well. And let me see back there, Brenda Winstead, who, again, incredible artist. And I'm sure I'm not naming everyone, but and actually Pam Rogers, who is in process, also is a textile artist. Could you artists in the room, all of you, could you stand up?
All of you, artists, stand up.
Yeah. Thank you. I think that you can all relate to what Kimberly has been saying, and to all, about the freedom and the importance of the process and how that helps us to get through life. So I guess the last question is, what does the future look like for your work in particular, and for the future specifically of Black craft? And I want to also talk about education. We have a lot of young people upstairs who are right now doing craft workshop, craft projects, thank you. Craft projects, which may one day be an institute. But what do you see in terms of the future specifically for your work, whether it be your scholarship or for the future of Black craft? Torren.
There's a lot. I'll talk just for me. So I have a second book that's under contract with UNC Press that looks at Black builders and makers, specifically in North Carolina, and spans all topographical regions. So from the water, as we call it in the east, the mountains, the lowlands, and how Black people participated in that making from every aspect. So talking about how, actually, Dr. Momon's contributing a chapter, it's talking about how HBCUs were pivotal in training people in the building arts, and actually building structures and buildings for public use, to painters, to a number of things within craft. But one of the hallmarks, I'll just say to that, is the idea of pride. And for us, that's one of the reasons why pride had to be a hallmark in the show and as a theme, because I think what kind of echoes through all of that as well is this fact that there's an immense amount of pride in all of the work that was done, all of the craft in that process of making. And so that's what is at the tip to come out next, among other things.
And I'll say that for me, the newest version of the Black Craftspeople Digital Archive will be out in June of 2026. And right now, if you go look at it, I tell people it's still very embryonic. You only get South Carolina and Tennessee. But waiting in the wings are North Carolina, Virginia, Massachusetts, Louisiana, Antigua, Jamaica, Haiti, New York, Alabama, and Mississippi. So they're coming. And Louisiana. And when I think about what that looks like, I tell people all the time, I'm a historian because I was a genealogist first. So I enjoy finding people. And so what I want people to do with the archive is to take what we found and go make something with it, whether it's writing an article or putting on another show or whatever the case may be. I'm just here to get you the info. And so when I think about the work, I'm excited about that. I'm excited about how people use the work and what comes of it. And in terms of scholarship, I'm under review for a book on 18th century craftsmen in Charleston. So be on the lookout.
I have some practical requests that I want to make of all of you when I talk about the future of craft. One thing is to tell these amazing scholars about who you know, who is in your family, one of your ancestors, someone you have heard of, who may not be known. Tell them so that they can include that information in the archive. The other thing is to support their work. It's one thing to celebrate what they're doing, and it's another thing to help make it happen. And I'm sure that they're not going to tell you why it's important to fund them. But we're at a time in our country where people are trying to erase our history. And they're trying to collect it. Believe in what they do, send them a check, help them out. The other thing is to support our institutions. That is the only way that we can maintain these traditions. That's the only way that we can ensure that people understand we're serious about it. This is not the first time that people tried to erase us, right? The Daughters of the Confederacy did a really good job, right? To the point where when you're in school, you learn about 3 Black people. No wonder we think we didn't do anything. We got to support our institutions so that if, God forbid, the federal institutions can't keep telling the story, our institutions, our scholars, and our artists can do it. But we can only do it if you join us and help us out.
That's very true. That's very true. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, I'm going to add one of the things that I think that the African American Craft Alliance takes is very important. First of all, to continue to document and to record and to create a database of contemporary African American artists working in the craft mediums. And we are both collecting, we have a database of about 600 right now, but there are so many more. Information on both artists who work in the studio, but who are utilizing traditional techniques and materials, as well as heritage artists and artisans. So the building arts are really important in this too. And so the other thing is that right now in the schools, craft is not really being taught. And I remember that when I was in elementary school, you know, there was things like shop, and there were things like sewing and things like that. Those things are not necessarily being taught anymore. And so our children, all of our children, need to know about all of our crafts and need to know the importance of continuing to make from so many points of view. And you know, we have a lot of trauma going on right now. And one of the things that Kimberly mentioned was about making, so that making is a therapeutic thing as well, and everyone who makes knows that that is the truth. So it serves so many purposes. So we have to continue to do that, and I'm so glad again that we're in a space that we can talk about this. And craft also, and this is the last point, creates community. We are all here in this hall really celebrating our curators, celebrating our craftspeople, and celebrating ultimately the community that we have and the community that we can build right now. Even when forces are trying to separate community, we are all part of this American experiment and this American community. And we can go forward in 2026 to maybe even, and I'm an optimist, get through some of these contradictions, but it's not going to happen unless we're all committed to that. So with that, we want to open it up. We have 5 minutes more, but we wanted to open it up for, you know, at least 1 or 2 questions. So anyone have a question that's been burning that we haven't answered? Yes.
I just had a question, listening to what you were talking about in terms of maintaining the tradition of crafts. How are crafts being defined today compared to the way they were defined before? For example, are there furniture makers anymore? We know we don't have silversmiths anymore. What categories of crafts exist? I mean, you mentioned the building crafts, but does that include architecture? So I want a little more definition of what that is today.
Great question. It looks like you have your mic
start.
right there, yes.
Because people are still trying to figure out what to do with doll makers. You saw some of my work that was up there, and I just got a Heritage Fellowship from the Arts Council in New Jersey for maintaining heritage traditions. Well, okay. You can call it that. But I did an exhibition a couple months earlier this year it closed. And the curators asked me why dolls were art. Why wasn't it considered craft? And I said, well, craft was traditionally used to identify utilitarian objects. Those made by untrained, skilled craftsmen, untrained skill, right? But we look at, we don't look at quilt making as a craft anymore because of Lisa Butler and some of the amazing quilt makers that are here. You know, the AIDS quilt is a piece of public art, it's not a quilt, right? So we continue to sort of define craft and fine art as fine art belonging to only one specific community and one particular kind of work. And what I keep telling people is stop doing that. You know, many craftspeople know multiple skills in order to create their work. You know, I engineer, I sew, I paint, I sculpt, you know, I design clothes, I bead. Now, a painter, I pick up my brush and I get my paints and I paint. It's a whole different process, but it involves all of those things. That furniture that's in that exhibition, the design work, the craftsmanship, putting the hardware on it, the appropriate curves, the symmetry of them. It takes so many different levels, and I encourage all of you that when people say craft, say fine art. Because it just is that, and there's a class issue behind fine art and craft that we don't have to accept. We just don't have to accept it.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, I don't know.
I like to broadly define it, and it's it's everything. It encompasses everything. I didn't show that slide just to save a bit of time, but there's a book by Ronald Lewis and James Newton, and they published this book in the mid-70s, 1970s. And what they have in the back is an appendix. And that appendix includes over 250 trades that they found enslaved people working in. So when I'm thinking about what craft is, it's broad. And I think about it in a way that I tell people all the time, I come to this work, I'm not an art historian, I just came to this work through my love of the decorative arts. And what I found out about that field is that they leave a lot of people out. And so what we do is we include those folks, and that's everyone from not just the cabinet maker, but we also include the sawyer, the person who sawed the wood, the tree cutter, the person who cut it down so the wood could be sawed so it could turn into a piece of furniture. Because I think it's so important to think about how many hands touched it before it became a piece of art.
It's really, literally, that was what I would have really said in the sense that, you know, when you look at, we like, again, that broad stroke, but looking at one piece or one object, for instance, and how, you know, multiple different skilled craftspeople can work with that. So Sawyer is the most obvious example, but being, not from North Carolina, but in North Carolina for a long time, the naval stores, right? If you are cutting longleaf pine, it's a tremendous asset because of the tar and the pitch. That's why we're the tar on the stage, if you don't know. And naval stores, shipbuilding. So there's got to be individuals who can go out into the forest, cut the trees, so they can be hauled back to then be sent at that point to the New England area to then be made into ships or hulls, right? But then also, similarly, you need sawyers in the process of producing iron ore, which iron ore plantations, if anybody didn't know, were the most hellacious in North America, to be honest. If you aren't familiar, iron plantations were just ferocious. But in order to have that, you needed 4 elements, and all of them were natural. You needed fast flowing water, you needed granite, you needed an iron ore deposit, well actually 5 you needed limestone, and you needed hard wood. So sawyers were necessary. In fact, they created their own culture similar to folks on the island coast. They would go into the mountains and they would live on their own, cut wood, haul it back, but they would cut it to fine specifications so that it was ready to be made. And so I think looking at how just one piece, right, a tree turned in or cut, then they're turned into lumber, and then that lumber being made or fastened into a hull and then finished, it's just seeing how just with one object, multiple different skilled people participate in it coming to be.
Well, that is very true. Thank you. So we are actually at the end. That was a great question. Thank you, and a great concluding question because we are at the end of our panel discussion and getting ready for the celebration of Kwanzaa. Which is dance, which is music, which is all sorts of wonderful things that will conclude our program and which will continue the celebration of our program. So I want to know whether we're ready. Okay, well, we thank you. We thank you all. We will give them a round of applause. We're going to get up and enjoy the rest of our program. Thank you. So don't go anywhere. And Claude from the Black Artists of DC, Columbia, and we are Claude Elliott. And so I'm going to turn this part of the program over to Claude Elliott. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. Dr. Tiffany, Momon, and Torren, Gatson. On behalf of the African American Crafts Alliance, Black Artists of DC, the Village of African American Dolls and Puppet Makers, we wish to express how much we value and appreciate your scholarship as public historians that document, archive, and preserve our history. Your vision and determination to establish the Black Craftspeople Digital Archives to survey, document, and give voice to the unidentified enslaved, and shine light on the underrepresented free craftsmakers and artisans who produce architecture, handcrafts, and decorative arts is a major academic achievement. We are inspired by your collaboration with DAR and the exhibition which examines the idea of freedom through the lens of Black craftspeople. Especially in these times of Black erasure of Black history and culture, we are inspired by your collaboration with student fellows and Black communities, modeling a framework for research documenting the individual and collective experiences of material culture. And to the audience, I want to say we are a vibrant and resilient Black community. We have the responsibility to ensure that this history is documented, taught, and practiced within our institutions and communities. As we conclude the celebration of Kwanzaa and face the challenges of 2026, this is our mission. So doctors, please accept these gifts as our appreciation for your contribution. We embrace you and surround you with love and support. We want to thank everybody for this wonderful Kwanzaa.